talking about sacred being all around us. Maybe some of you remember the story of Moses, who was looking at the burning bush and saw an angel inside of the burning bush, and he started to approach, and God said, "No, do not come any closer." He said, "Take off your shoes, because where you stand is holy ground." And we can take that to be metaphysically understood, that wherever you are, there God is. Wherever you stand is a sacred place, because you were there. The minister that I worked under in Albuquerque before I came here, she always worked barefooted. And people would criticize her, but she did it because of that concept. Wherever she stood was sacred ground. And you know, in the East, because it's a lot like Reno in that it's sandy and there's a lot of desert. And so feet and sandals would get really dirty and filled up with sand. So it was their practice and their habit to take off their shoes when they entered the temple. And so any time that they would take their shoes off, and Moses would take his shoes off, that was very representative of entering the temple. Wherever you are, God is. And it's all sacred space. No matter how we run our lives through a filter of our judgments and our criticisms and our negativity and our joys and our glories, it's all the same. It's all sacred. So I have a reading that I'd like to share with you from Thich Nhat Hanh, who in Pieces Every Step has said it so much better than I. So I want to read this for you. Thich Nhat Hanh says, "Defiled or immaculate, dirty or pure, these are concepts we form in our mind. A beautiful rose we have just cut and placed in our vase is pure. It smells so good, so fresh. A garbage can is the opposite. It smells horrible, and it's filled with rotten things. But this is only when we look on the surface. If we look more deeply, we will see that in just 5 or 6 days, the rose will become part of the garbage. We do not need to wait 5 days to see it. If we just look at the rose and we look deeply, we can see it now. And if we look into the garbage can, we see that in a few months, its contents will be transformed into lovely vegetables and even a rose. If you are a good organic gardener, looking at a rose, you can see the garbage. And looking at the garbage, you can see a rose. Roses and garbage inter-are. Without a rose, we cannot have garbage. And without garbage, we cannot have a rose. They need each other very much. The rose and the garbage are equal. The garbage is just as precious as the rose." So that's what I'm talking about here today. When I say that it's all sacred, the garbage and the rose are equally sacred. It's how we run them through our personal filters. It's how we take a look at things. Now, we talk about matter, which is absolutely God in action. It's all the same. Matter is as sacred as anything that we label or call spiritual. So, we go from those small, I'm going to just read this, we go from protons to electrons to neutrons, and then we discovered quarks, and finally, for now, tachyons are probably the smallest unit of matter, since theoretically they have imaginary mass and travel faster than the speed of light. And then we look at the macrocosm, and we see stars, and we see galaxies, and we see super galaxies, and we see black holes, and now the latest one is the Sloan Great Wall, which is a supercluster of galaxies, which is 1.7 billion light years. Well, I don't have any idea what that means. It's unfathomable, isn't it? Wow. And I heard a great line this week. I love the way it just sort of perks up for me. The line is that some infinities are larger than other infinities. I love it. And yet it's true, isn't it? We just have to sit in the complexity of it and the dichotomy of it. Some infinities are larger than other infinities. But it's true. It's all sacred. No matter how large it is or how small it is. No matter how nasty it is or how pure it is. No matter what, it's all sacred. So today I want to give you like 3 little tools and skills, not to live in the sacred, because we already do that, but to be aware of living in the sacred. So here we go. The first is to be willing to live with a broken, open heart. So when we talk about it all being sacred, being willing to keep our heart open to those things that we judge, those things that we may judge like icky, those things that we may judge that are not working for us, or those things that we judge that we love. Being willing to hold your heart open, hold our hearts open to it all, to sit in it. And when stuff happens, being willing to keep the heart open enough to see the sacred in it, to be willing to allow ourselves to sit in the pain, sit in the hurt, without judgment of this is good or this is bad, to keep our hearts open. That's a challenge. But it's necessary when we make a commitment to acknowledge that it is all sacred. And we can't close our hearts to the garbage. We can't close our hearts to what we have judged as the bad stuff, because it's all God. And it's only our judgments about it that makes the difference. Roses are roses and garbage is garbage, and they're all the same essence of the divine. So that's the first tool or skill that I want to share with you about allowing yourself to be aware that it's all sacred. And the second is to be willing to listen. So, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Don Juan, who was the teacher of Carlos Castaneda. And so there is listening and there's hearing. And there's looking and there's seeing. And so Don Carlos says to Carlos Castaneda, Don Juan says to Carlos Castaneda, you know, a warrior hears. A warrior listens with open ears. But more important, there is the looking and the seeing. So he says this: a man of knowledge chooses a path with heart and follows it. And then he looks and rejoices and laughs. And then he sees and knows. Looking refers to the ordinary way in which we are accustomed to perceive the world. Looking entails the ordinary way that we are accustomed to perceiving the world. And seeing entails a more complex virtue of which a man of knowledge allegedly perceives the essence of things of the world. So we can look with our eyes, or we can see with our hearts. We can look more deeply and see. We can listen more deeply and hear from the place of the heart. And the third, to me, which is the most important way of knowing that the sacred is everywhere, and that is to sit in gratitude, to be in gratitude. Keeping the heart open, hearing and seeing from that place of gratitude, without judgments and without criticisms, just being willing. So, in our final affirmation that we talk about every Sunday, just saying thanks to life, just the way that it is, and just the way that it is not, because it is all sacred. Whether we are judging it good or whether we're judging it bad, it is all sacred. Just the way that it is, and just the way that it is not. And then we say, thank you, life. So reminding ourselves and absolutely remembering that it is all sacred. Wherever we walk, we are walking the divine. We are enter it as Technicon says. We're it. It's all us. It's not, this is sacred, this is holy, this is divine. And then we take a look and we say, that's bad, that's evil, that's wrong, that's dirty, that's nasty. It's all sacred. Because of the infinity that is huge some places and small some places, it's all matter of God. So being willing to keep an open heart, being willing to sit with pain, sit with the hurt, sit with the joy, sit with the peace, sit with the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent with an open heart. Engaging life from that place. Now, when I talk about the heart, I'm not necessarily talking about the organ. I'm talking about that energy that is the foundation of our love, our very essence, the heart. So being willing to keep that open, not being willing to shut it down and shut it off when it doesn't feel good. And then being willing to really hear, really listen deeply. And being willing to really see deeply. And then being willing to be grateful for it all. That's going to be tough, can't it? I talked to my niece, and some of you, I've mentioned this to you, but I'm going to tell those of you that maybe haven't heard it. I talked about it in class. I talked with my niece, and she got a job, and so, you know, that was finally a validation for her, because we've been holding in prayer that she would find just the perfect work, and she was getting discouraged. But she shared this line with me from the TV show, The Middle. Do you all know that show? Well, I'm not that familiar with it, but apparently there is a character in the TV show, The Middle. Sue, who is a teenager, and she's just so joy-filled. But things don't always go well for Sue. Sue sometimes has some really disappointments for herself, like the boy that she's interested in doesn't care for her. She tried out to be a cheerleader and she didn't get it. But always as the optimist, she came slamming into the house after a horrible day of setbacks and disappointments and icky stuff. She entered the house and she declared, "This world is so precious. I can hardly wait for the next moment." And then she went into her room. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. That this world is so precious with all of its warts and its pimples and its disappointments and its sadness and its inequities, it is so precious. And just waiting for the next moment with anticipation, with enthusiasm, and with joy. So that's what I wish for you this week. I wish that you can address your life with that same sort of enthusiasm, knowing that the world is so precious that you can hardly wait for the next moment, and knowing that it is all sacred because it's all God, and being willing to keep your heart open no matter what, and being willing to listen and hear, being willing to see from that deepest level, and then being grateful for it all, just the way that it is and just the way that it is not. I love you all. I love you all. And I can hardly wait for your next moment. Namaste. The practitioners, there's two of them today. Erin is back in town, Vince is unwell, and Elisa, I guess, is still in Carson City. But we got the power here. So I invite you to join with me. As I just turn within. As I stand in this sacred place, in this sacred space. As I allow my heart to be open to it all. As I know that underneath all of it is the divine essence, the Godness. And I permit myself the freedom of relishing it all. To trust and know that everything is in divine right order, unfolding in perfection. I allow myself to sit in the eternal. To expand infinitely into the Godness that I am. And I invite you to do the same with me. To absolutely, on the deepest level, know that you are that sacred essence. And your spirit, your soul, is eternal. In the largest sense of the eternal. You're not some kind of little petty, teeny, tiny eternal. You're the whole ball of wax eternal. The hugeness of it all, the Godness of it all, the expressiveness of it all, the sacredness of who you are and who you came here to be, limitlessly, expansively, in brilliance, beyond measure. Having called forth all of the talents and skills and abundance and vigor and vitality that is the eternal essence of it all. And so, in this moment, I joyfully celebrate the divine, the sacred, the holy, just the way that it is, and just the way that it is not. And I say, thank you. And so it is.